Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome to another Pride and Grit Spouse Spotlight. I am happy for you guys to be joining today, and I am equally happy to have Gailo Bodenhamer with us. And she's going to talk a little bit about what she has been up to with Millie and with their Scout program, but we're also just going to talk a little bit about mill life along the way, as we usually do. So, first, I want to bring her in. So, welcome. Did I just say that right?
Yes, yeah,
Yay!
you got
Okay,
it perfect.
awesome. Well, welcome to our spotlight, and I appreciate you being here with us.
Of course. Thanks for inviting me.
If you want to start off with just kind of a highlight reel for yourself, always great to kind of get to know people and understand a little bit about your military spouse journey, and then we'll put in talk about a couple different things.
Sure, of course. I'm an Army spouse. I've been married for nearly 20 years, come this summer. So it's been a while. I feel like it hasn't been that long, but when I really look at the calendar, it has been. My husband and I got married a few weeks after he was commissioned in the Army. So I've been with him from the beginning through Oconus moves to
Through
Germany,
all of it.
back to the States, crisscrossing back and forth, kids, dogs, multiple, trips back and forth between different assignments. So I feel like I've had a lot of experiences that I didn't anticipate.
Sure.
But it's always been fun. I like to keep a positive attitude about it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I'm sure there's lots of good stories from 20 years.
yeah. Gosh, I can't believe it's been that long. It makes me feel a little bit old to say
No,
that,
yeah,
but
no.
hey, here we are.
We are approaching, this is like year 16 of me being around, 14 of being married, and it definitely does not feel like that. And it's weird to sort of feel like the older people in the room sometimes.
Yes.
But
How did that happen?
I know, right? I'm still, I don't know, maybe like 30. I don't feel in my 20s, but I certainly don't feel in my 40s. So I guess that's a good thing. But anyway, we are happy to have you here. So I wanted to start off with one of the things I try to ask all of the guests that we have, which is really just kind of going into that military life and your military spouse experience, just understanding your perspective on, what is the thing over those 20 years, what's the thing that you would say has been the hardest, and what would be the thing that you have really treasured the most about, spending those 20 years as a military spouse?
Sure. I think the thing that I found the most intimidating when I got married was I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I never had lived anywhere else, the same house my whole life until I was 22 years old. And all of a sudden, we were anticipating this move to another country because that was our
Oh,
first
wow.
duty station. So that was really
That's
a
big.
leap of faith for me to take on so much change in such a short period of time. And I'm really glad I did.
Yeah.
I never would have gained the perspective that I have on the world, um, independence for myself, the fact that I made it, we did it. It wasn't always pretty or fun, but we survived,
Yeah.
um, and we're still thriving. Um, and I think one thing I didn't realize before I became a military spouse is how quickly you can form bonds with other people that you haven't known for very long,
Mm-hmm.
really, just over your common experience. Living in the same place for 22 years, of course, I had, very close friends and family and stuff like that there. So you expect that. But um, moving to a strange place with a lifestyle that
Mm-hmm.
you aren't even familiar with yet. My family doesn't have a history of military service, so I really didn't have a perspective on what things could be like in the future for me. So that was a very pleasant surprise, and I've had a lot of great experiences and very close relationships that I treasure and I would never have had if it weren't
Right.
for
I,
my time as a military spouse. So
sure.
I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. I mean,
Because they're people that I consider family
yeah,
now.
no, for
Like
sure.
yeah, it's amazing.
The family,
So
the
I think
family you
that's the most
choose.
positive. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I don't think any
Yeah,
of us, could look at like the differences if you if you had stayed, if you'd stayed where you were, and not that you wouldn't have had a full life there too, but I think what I often hear in these conversations is the kind of the richness of experience that just naturally happens as you're moving around the country, and you end up with people from all walks of life, from all parts of the world that become part of your circle. And it's easy to see that maybe that wouldn't have quite happened the same way had you stayed in one place. um, so
absolutely.
it's definitely, I think, a favorite among many.
Yeah.
Um, so part of the reason I was hoping to have you talk to us a little bit about what you're doing over with Millie is, one, because I'm a huge fan of Millie and a huge fan now of the Scout program. Some folks may remember the post a couple of months now, I guess, where there was a Millie Scout that I had to enlist because we were trying to find a house and we had to do it sight unseen very quickly. And she was like swooped in, helped me out, like awesome. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the program, but then also kind of how did you carve this path for yourself as being now, in charge of this component of what Millie's offering, and being able to help all these families with this program.
Sure. Well, Millie Scouts are all military spouses or veterans that are all over across the United States, Hawaii. We would even accept some overseas, but we don't have any at this time to help people out of there. It's a little different situation,
Sure.
of course. But we just kind of stand by to lend a helping hand in many different ways, not only to families that are PCSing and maybe are faced with renting or purchasing a property sight unseen. They just want that perspective of another military family who's been there and done that kind of thing, to let them know that they're making the right choice. It's just an extra set of eyes. And then also for military landlords, I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
families end up purchasing homes that they have to move away from, and maybe it's in it for investment reasons, they keep the property, or because they move on short notice and don't have the opportunity to sell it. So they need to rent it out to another family. And so we can step in and kind of be their eyes and their boots on the ground to help them keep that investment safe. They're still doing the managing. We're not making
Sure.
any of the investment decisions or any sort of things like that as far as the legalities of it. But we're there to, take photos, check up on things. If some neighbors call and say something's going on, we can go and check on that. Um, and I know how I got started with it. A friend joined as a scout because she was stationed at the same place as the woman who founded the program, and she had posted on Facebook and said, "Hey, my neighbor is starting this great program, and it's basically something we all do for each other already."
Right.
Um, I know I always kind of shout out to my network of friends that I've developed. Have you been to this duty
Sure.
station? Can you give me the lowdown? What about this neighborhood or this area? So we're always looking for feedback on that. But sometimes if you're a new military spouse or it's a location that you don't know anybody at, Scouts can be a resource for you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I know I feel this way. Even if I had a friend at the duty station, it might be a big ask for them to go and do those sort of chores for me, especially if it's something over and over again. Um, and
Yeah.
I know it can be something that you do have to realize has to fit into your budget because there is a cost to it with a scout. But I think it's twofold. That's giving me peace of mind. It's worth it to me to pay a little bit, so I can feel like I'm making the right decision as
Mm-hmm.
far as the new place I'm moving. But also, scouts are vetted. We go through an application process, we check references, we make sure that they really do have that experience to back up the details that they're going to provide you. So you know what you're going to get if you're hiring a scout, that they've been there and done the military lifestyle, they've lived what you're looking for, and that they're going to provide you a good perspective and
Right.
um, an honest viewpoint of where you're moving. So I think that's the value of it. And you're helping out another military
Right.
family.
That's
You're
always,
putting money in another spouse's pocket too. I
yeah.
know we're always looking to have a side hustle, I guess is what they call it these days for some of us. And that's really how I got started with it. I think you wanted me to kind of parlay
No,
into
no,
that
I mean,
too.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So it was, first of all, I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And I'm actually stationed at Detroit Arsenal right now, is where my husband is. Very small location. I had never heard of it
Hmm.
before we moved here.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
yeah, never had heard of it. Man, would I have liked to have had a scout
I
to
know,
help
right?
me when I moved here. I was like, gosh, I'd really like to do that for someone. I would like to be that person
Right.
that someone could call on if they had questions or needed perspective on the community here, because we're really far flung. There's no military housing here in Detroit, so we live all over
Mm,
in the suburban communities, kind of spread out. So there's not that core network
right.
of people when you first
Yep.
get here that you can be like, hey, can I leave my kid with you for half an hour?
Well, I go
So
look
we
at it.
didn't
Yeah.
have that. Um, so that would have been something that I really would have liked to have had someone to kind of fall back on. I mean, I did develop the relationships over time, but it wasn't that typical safety net that we get used to when you live in a larger military community.
Well, and I think
So,
sometimes, like, even when I've moved to bigger places, like, I may know people there, but it's not like, I don't know. Sometimes I think, and maybe I'm not great about asking for help, which is entirely possible, but I think also it's like this threshold, right? Like, there's some friends that you'd call in the middle of the night for what you need, and then there's some friends that you would call if it doesn't feel like a major inconvenience. Like I feel like there's like
mhm,
levels, right? And
absolutely.
and there's some things that what I loved about the way the program is structured is that it kind of alleviates that burden's not really the right word, but sort of the pressure on, because I had a friend at JBLM who originally was going to go look at the house for me, and then her daughter got sick, and so she couldn't, which was fine. But in the end, I think it almost worked out better because, if she'd gone in and said, "Oh, I think it's gonna be perfect for you guys," and then I get there and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," or whatever. If I hadn't seen it the way she saw it, obviously I'm not gonna be mad at her. She's my friend and she did me a favor. But there's something really great, I think, about kind of an opinion that is just neutral. They don't really have a vested interest in the same way that your friend might. Who wants you to live down the street from them or like whatever. Um,
Right.
I just
So
think
true.
that sort of neutral opinion
Mhm.
is helpful, and someone who's done a lot of these and like walked through a lot of different houses, and so they've got good frame of reference for what's good carpet condition, what's bad carpet condition, like whatever. I think
Right.
all that for me was really ended up being really helpful in making our decision. So that I think that was one part about the program that I thought was um, makes it kind of unique in that regard. But so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the path, because, one of the things we talk about as we go through these spotlights is we want to spotlight some of the cool things that are going on in the community. And this is definitely one of them, and the great services that's available, but also talk about how people get involved with those. So you can talk a little bit about, like, if someone had an interest in being a scout or had an interest in hiring a scout, what does that look like, normally? But then also kind of, I'm interested too, your path and kind of how that evolved for you. Because I think, I was doing an interview recently with someone. We were talking about how important it often is for military spouses, and perhaps for you as well at 20 years, to have something that's your own, and to have something that you're able to do, and to be able to, for a lot of people, to be able to do it and give back to this community, which is really kind of what you're doing, is this really nice combination that is sometimes kind of hard to find. So I was curious, you're kind of, that's a lot. So tackle that in any order you like. But those are some of the
Okay.
things I was thinking about as you were talking. So,
Sure, sure. So I became a scout back in 2015, shortly after the program kind of got kicked off. Before we joined the Millie under the Millie umbrella.
mm-hmm.
So I was a scout even before Millie came along. So at first, I just did it to be available to other military spouses because I felt like I was contributing, like you said, back to my own community. And it's something that I would have loved to have had as a resource myself. So that was kind of my heart was in it for those reasons. But also I did want something for myself. My path hasn't been straight. I've had a lot of curves. I worked in a bank. I worked at the Army Education Center. Then I had kids and took a break for a few years there. I worked and let's see, what else have I done? We've had a lot of different things going on. I became a military spouse fellow through the FINRA Foundation, which provides scholarships to military spouses to become financial counselors. I did that back in 2011. It's an awesome program. They've actually extended the deadline for that this year with everything that's going on as far as the people can still apply for that through July 1st of this year. So that put another tool in my belt. It was a 2-year program where I did some study to become a financial counselor, and then also volunteered in the community. I volunteered in the tax center at our installation that I was at then. Then we PCS'd again, and and that's when I found out about Millie, or the Scout program, and then it became part of Millie. And so I had joined up and done the training just to be available to other spouses and to give back to the community, just so that I didn't want another spouse to feel like they didn't have someone to turn to when they were in the middle of this crazy, stressful process that we have to do every few years. So that was the reason that I joined the program. And then I really loved trying to make connections for people, my friends and my network that I have kind of cultivated over the last 20 years. I'm like, hey, I know about a great person at, Fort Campbell. Let me hook you up with her. She's a scout. She can definitely give you, a good perspective on what the community's like there and help you out if you do need some help. So I really enjoyed helping make those connections and contributing back to the program to help developing some of their awesome base guides that they have available on the website for free. So they do have quite a few resources that you can turn to there as well. Like, they're developing them and updating them constantly. So that's definitely another resource that they had available. And then in 2018, the scout director at that time stepped into a different position at another company, and the position came open, and I had, been corresponding with Kellie and all of them quite a bit just through the last, three years that I had been a scout. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put myself out there. I sent her some of my ideas and I said, hey, I really, I've been taking note of these things for the last 3 years, and I would really like to see this happen. And I made some suggestions, and then I just threw it at the bottom, and I was like, and is that position open? Is the scout director position open? Because I'd really like some more information about that if that's, going to be coming available.
You got to ask, right?
Right. That's what I decided, because I had been putting out applications for my financial counselor thing that I had just finished, and I really hadn't gotten very far with that. I had put out a lot of resumes, tried to make some connections, and I wasn't finding something that was fitting with my lifestyle.
Right.
I needed flexibility with my kids. My husband travels a lot with his position, so I just couldn't find something that fit until I threw that at the bottom of the email. I was like, I think I could do this, and these are my ideas. So I was really glad that Kellie listened and gave me a chance to try some new things with this program and try to keep it going and expand it to provide more ways that we can help other military families like ourselves, because we are in the community, we are part of it, and we also want to help other spouses find their path too. And I really feel like that's the great thing about the Scout program. When we're hiring scouts all the time, I would love to have 2 or 3 scouts in every base. So it's not just one scout at each one. We really do try to have a team because, like I said, it has to fit your lifestyle. Maybe you know, one scout can't help you out on that evening, but another one can. So
Sure.
they really work together to accommodate. And maybe that one of them's more familiar with a different area of town than another one. So we really try to work together to help out clients and the other military families that we're trying to help feel settled,
Yeah.
because that's what it's all about. That's what I really loved about Millie's mission, is taking the stress out of the PCS. I mean, man, it's
Yes,
already
please.
bad enough.
Right.
I know I'm scheduled to PCS.
Me
We'll
too.
see if it happens this
Me
year.
too. It's the big
So,
mystery.
exactly. That's what I feel like. Every day is a new day, and we just have to take it every moment as it comes.
So I want to back up to a minute to something that you said, which I think is really important in terms of, people kind of finding their own path. And, what I hear in some of the things you're saying is that you ended up essentially following an interest or a passion, this thing you wanted to do to give back and to have a little bit of your own thing, but really just motivated by helping others. And then by doing that and by investing yourself in that, the opportunity came along for you to be able to move into the position that you're in. And I think sometimes, especially as military spouses, we get to a certain place and it's like, oh, well, this isn't exactly what I want, which, and we all obviously can turn out anything we don't want, right? But sometimes you have to also recognize that you may not be able to see the end state, and the end state may be coming later, and being able to take that leap, and go ahead and put your name at the bottom of that email, and you don't necessarily know where it's going to end up, but to just go ahead and kind of take some of those smaller risks, and do the things that are interesting to you and that you can invest in and that you're gonna really want to give back to, and then see where that leads and see what skill sets you develop that can then put you in another place. So I think that's always just a really important thing for all of us to remember, because I think we all have this idea, this is my skill set, this is the job I want, and absolutely wait
mhm.
for that if that's what you want to do. But if you really just want to get engaged, then figure out what a different version of that might look like, and see maybe if something else might also fit, and it may be totally outside the box for you. Sometimes outside the box is not a bad thing, and it can give you
Right.
skills that you didn't even know you needed or wanted or actually enjoyed. I'm always amazed at the number of people I've talked to that, like, oh, I never knew that I liked this thing until I did it, and then I realized, oh wow, I'm really good at that. Like, I never would have known that I was really good at that. So sometimes that leap is so
So true.
important. It's hard, but it's so important.
Right. Sometimes it's hard to take those steps, but you just never know where your path is going to lead, and it doesn't hurt to ask.
Right.
All they can say is no, and then you
Right.
can try something else or keep
Yes.
on, trucking with, what you got. But yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely not something that I could have said I would be doing.
Right.
Even 5 years ago, I was still trying to figure out
Yeah.
what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Yeah, and
Well,
you
and
don't always have to decide, and you can change your mind.
I
That's
know,
what I
right?
like.
That's okay.
It's okay to change your mind. Yeah.
I was also thinking, I was wondering, with your 20 years, like if you were to be giving advice to your, younger military spouse self. I mean, I think the military's changed a decent amount in those 20 years as it relates to military spouses, but what would be the thing that, looking back now, you really wish you'd realized sooner, in that, in those 20 years?
I think that I probably would have been a little more confident of my own path and
Mm,
interest and all of that, because I think at the beginning, it was more about my husband, and he did have to meet his requirements and all of that for staying in a certain number of years. So I felt kind of just like I was on this ride, and that it was just about him.
right.
Uh,
Just a passenger.
right, exactly. And I kind of wish that I had taken a little bit more for myself earlier on.
Hmm.
I didn't. I just kind of went along with whatever. I didn't do a lot of research or job searching until we got a place, and I just
Right,
figured it out after that. And I wish
right.
I'd been a little more proactive about um, asking my
Mm,
network of other military spouses before, hey, do you know of any opportunities here? I really didn't understand the value of working your connections and your
oh,
network until much later.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
but now that's
I think that's a hard one. I don't think I did either. And I don't know if that's a product of age or if that's a product of the time. Like, is it more acceptable to kind of lean on that network now than it was, 15 years ago? I don't know the answer to that one, but I think much like you, it was like, you reserve those. Those are like your golden things, right? You reserve those asks and those conversations for when you really need it, not, what are perceived, I think, as those smaller asks. But now I think I don't feel that way at all. I feel like, if it's a small ask, it's a small ask. That's fine. If it's a big ask, it's a big ask. That's fine. You still engage your network, and because that's I think all of us love help. If we can help align someone else with something that's going to be good for them, like who doesn't want to do that, right? Like who wouldn't
right.
want to be a part of that and be able to help connect someone,
Yeah.
to a job or to, even if it's, hey, this person's going to be your duty station and you guys are going to get along great, like whatever. Just the ability to make connections, I think, is one of the fun things about these networks and about how big our networks really are.
I couldn't agree more. That nothing warms my heart more than helping a friend make a connection, or just it's just what brings me joy and
Mm-hmm.
is part of uh, the benefits of being a military spouse, and learning to work together. And we're all in this together, and yeah, it
Yeah.
just brings me so much joy to know that I'm helping. Like that's part of why I wanted um, to be the scout director, is I wanted to just help inspire the other spouses to help each other, and let's make these connections. Let's make this easier. We can do this. We have so many tools now that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have 15
Yeah.
years ago. I mean, there was no Facebook
Oh my
back
gosh.
in 2000 when my
So
husband,
many things.
I mean, it was like a college thing, right? I think Facebook in the beginning, it wasn't this giant social network that
Yeah.
it is today for us to connect.
No.
And all the other resources. It just, so many things have changed, and it's so much for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you hanging out with us. I will put links to obviously Millie and the kind of the scout
great.
program in the description so folks can find you. And I assume if people are interested in being a scout, they can find everything they need to know there. If they're interested in hiring a scout, super easy process. So if you're headed to a duty station and you're not quite sure about it, or you need someone to check out a property or something like that, definitely take a peek at it, and take advantage of that just fantastic resource. So, Gailo, I really appreciate you hanging with us, and we will call it a night.
Great. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this spotlight. We will have more every Wednesday, so keep checking back and make sure you're following our Facebook so that you can see them when they come in.